We often say that appearance reflects the heart, meaning a person's goodness or evil is shown in their looks, which is the essence of ancient physiognomy. However, this well-known saying carries a much deeper meaning, which is not only one of the fundamental ideas presented in Laozi Tao Te Ching but also a significant concept embraced by many ancient philosophers. Hello, and welcome to the Daily Book Club, where we listen to a good book every day to upgrade our thinking. Today, we continue to interpret Laozi's Tao Te Ching. Laozi's perspective on good and evil, right and wrong, reveals his views on morality. How can we maintain an objective perspective on all things and act consistently with the principles of heaven? Good and evil stem from the heart. The first layer of meaning in appearance arises from the heart, is that a person's inner goodness or evil is reflected in their appearance. Here, appearance refers to looks and features. However, this appearance has a second layer of meaning, which can also be understood as outward expression. What is outward expression? Appearance arises from the heart originates from the Sutra of Impermanence. The Buddha stated that appearances stem from the heart. What can be seen is not truly a thing. What can be felt is not truly a matter. Destiny is created by oneself, appearance arises from the heart, and the environment changes with the mind. Greatness comes from inclusiveness. This means that the world does not inherently have specific forms or concepts. The notions of good and bad arise from changes within our hearts. What we see with our eyes may not necessarily be the truth of the world, and what we feel may not reflect the essence of this world. If a person misplaces a valuable item at home, they may suspect their neighbor of stealing it after some thought. They notice the neighbor's behavior and find it all quite suspicious. Every single gesture feels utterly deceitful and insincere. But within just a couple of days, they unexpectedly find the item at home. Now, looking at the neighbor, there is no longer any feeling of suspicion. Throughout this process, the neighbor's appearance did not change. Only the observer's heart changed. We can also do a simple test to experience how appearance arises from the heart. Everyone, take a look at this image. Do you see a profile of a young girl? Or do you see an old woman looking down? I'll give you 10 seconds to observe. This is one of the most famous double images, created by British cartoonist William Heath, titled My Wife and My Mother-in-Law. A diverse group of scientists hailing from Australia conducted a comprehensive test using this striking image and concluded that the perception of the artwork largely depends on the viewer's age and life experiences. The conclusion was published in the British Journal of Scientific Reports. The statistics reveal that younger viewers typically perceive younger women in artwork, and interestingly, the younger the viewer is, the younger the age they assign to the woman depicted in the painting, reflecting their own age perspective. In contrast, older viewers predominantly see elderly women in media. We often say not to make assumptions and to see things as they are. But sometimes, what we perceive may not reflect the actual truth, so will you still choose to hold on to your deeply held beliefs? Now let's look at a phrase from the Diamond Sutra. All conditioned phenomena are like dreams, illusions, bubbles, and shadows. They should be viewed as such. It feels like a moment of enlightenment. Why are all things like dreams and illusions? Because our most trusted senses and consciousness can sometimes deceive us. Often, the world we perceive is merely shaped by our own individual perspectives, rather than reflecting the true nature of reality. That's why the profound Diamond Sutra articulates that all forms we perceive are mere delusions. Thus, Huining said, Bodhi has no tree, and the bright mirror is not a platform. Initially, there is emptiness. Dust has no place. If there is originally nothing, then where do troubles come from? Why is there a distinction between good and evil? In this fast-paced modern world of technology, a vast amount of information is generated every day. We instinctively introduce ideas of good and evil when discussing social issues. The binary concepts of right and wrong lead to debates. We can casually browse through a variety of trending news stories or engaging videos, and nearly all comments seem to spark disputes. Academics tend to dislike discussions on metaphysics, while herbalists are averse to critiques of traditional Chinese medicine. Some wealthy people feel superior, while some poor people lament the disparities in this world. People argue daily, seemingly over good and evil, but in reality, they argue for their own positions. Many complex issues do not have a clear right or wrong answer. Differing perspectives inevitably lead to varying judgments and opinions. Diverse perspectives often lead to vastly different opinions, and a refusal to consider alternative views typically results in arguments. For example, is studying the only way for people to succeed? Whether the answer is yes or no, either is the correct answer. Because each person's circumstances differ, so do their suitable paths. As Zhuangzi wisely noted, many complex issues in this world lack a unified standard. People often find themselves in disputes because they firmly hold on to their own beliefs, living within their own perspectives. When a person is troubled, they tend to despise the entire world. When a person is in a great mood, they may tolerate all the mistakes of those around them. A person who is deeply troubled inside will often feel a sense of panic at the slightest disturbance or disruption. A person with a bright and compassionate heart views everything around them with a forgiving mindset. We need to be more objective towards this world, and we need to be more objective towards everything. The reason people experience various emotions, believing there is good and bad, virtue and vice, is due to their inner state. When a person's heart truly changes, the entire world changes. The way a person uniquely perceives the Tao profoundly influences how they see and understand the world. This is also one of the core ideas of the Tao Te Ching. How can we attain this? Laozi stated in the Tao Te Ching that recognizing beauty also brings forth the concept of ugliness. Where there is a clear notion of good, evil exists. Existence and non-existence, ease and difficulty, long and short, high and low, sound and silence, as well as front and back, all interdependently define and complement each other. When we define what is beautiful, ugliness will appear. When we define what is good, evil will appear. People often define things based on the perspectives of good and evil, right and wrong. In reality, things often don't have to be simply black or white, but rather complex. We often find ourselves viewing everything in stark opposites since we are deeply attached to our personal illusions and constantly arguing with others. That's why Laozi said not to argue and to practice non-action. To argue is to believe that one is right, while not arguing is the essence of the Tao. What should we do in such situations? Laozi stated in the Tao Te Ching to minimize desires and appreciate wonders. Desire frequently while recognizing limits. This means to forget our subjective notions of good and bad and desires, to feel the world anew, and we will sense true beauty and hear the sounds of nature. The sounds of nature in Zhuangzi's view. We often say that beautiful songs are like the sounds of nature, but what exactly are the sounds of nature? The term sounds of nature is something we often hear, originating from Zhuangzi's theory of equality. In the state of Chu, a man named Laozi Tao experienced unity with heaven and earth while in forgetfulness, unity with everything around us. His disciple then asked, "What is the highest state of forgetting oneself?" Laozi Tao identified three types of sounds, those made by humans, those from the earth, and those from heaven. What we call Runlai is the sound produced by people playing instruments. Delay refers to the unique sound produced by the earth when the wind gently blows across its surface. And what about Tianlai? It is the wonderful sounds produced by the wind blowing through all things. To hear the sounds of Tianlai, one must first reach a state of selflessness, merging with heaven and earth. Tianlai refers to the harmonious sounds of all things we hear when we finally let go of our attachments and preconceived positions. It is the true nature of sound. Music itself, in its purest form, has no inherent emotions like joy, anger, sorrow, or happiness. Rather, it is perceived subjectively based on one's personal mindset. When feeling uplifted and in a good mood, cheerful music brings immense joy. However, when experiencing a bad mood, even cheerful tunes can become quite irritating. When we take the time to calm our busy minds, we can truly hear music in its purest, original state. This is Tianlai. Thus, the quality of music does not depend on the music itself, but on the listener. Similarly, the quality of anything does not depend on the thing itself. It varies based on the observer's viewpoint. Laozi states in chapter 11 of the Tao Te Ching that the utility of a cart lies in the hub, emphasizing the value of emptiness. Mountains act as tools. Their utility exists even in emptiness. Carving windows and doors creates a room, even if one doesn't exist. Having it is advantageous, while lacking it also has value. 30 spokes surround a single hub. Just looking at the wheel, it has no use. Once put together as a cart, it is very useful. A pile of clay seems worthless on its own, but when shaped into pottery, it reveals its value. Doors and windows left aside, if not used for building, are just a heap of waste. Therefore, objective materials always have their utility. Even things that seem useless can be transformed into useful items. Thus, usefulness and uselessness depend on how people use them. Similarly, good and bad, right and wrong, depend on the perspective from which they are analyzed. Emptying oneself allows one to distance from fixed thinking. An empty cup can effectively hold water, thereby successfully fulfilling its intended role as a cup. A house can comfortably accommodate people because it has sufficient space, thereby fulfilling its essential role as a home. If a person has a good side, they may also have a bad side. If a person has a bad side, they may also have a good side. This is the way of enlightenment from ancient sages. Laozi stated that the Tao encompasses opposites, where weakness embodies its use. Everything in the world comes from existence, which itself comes from non-existence. Because a person's thinking is rigid, they can only see the good or bad side of things, and cannot view an issue comprehensively, thus failing to grasp the secret of the Tao. The suffering and joy we experience in this world are primarily shaped by our own thinking, rather than being inherently tied to the situations themselves. Extreme negativity can lead to positivity, just as excessive joy can result in sorrow. Even the worst situation may reveal opportunities when viewed from a different angle. When a person is doing well, they should be cautious and think of potential dangers. As someone said, "What's the point of knowing the wisdom of these sages?" In this society, making money is the most useful. Earning money leads to a better life. People's differing perspectives lead to varying definitions of good and bad, meaning one person's usefulness may not be seen the same way by others. Is discussing life's wisdom useful? Making money isn't wrong. Usefulness or uselessness, right or wrong, there is no unified answer. It all depends on a person's mindset and the stage of life they are in. Everyone has their own perspective on issues, but when a person stubbornly believes that their view is the only correct one, they are truly mistaken. When we argue with a stubborn person, it's like staring into the abyss. In the end, we may also fall into the abyss. It's like being a vegetarian yourself isn't wrong, but urging everyone in the world to be vegetarian is wrong. Many individuals tend to measure everything according to their own unique moral standards, yet this personal standard varies greatly. There truly is no one-size-fits-all answer in this diverse world. The heart is the sole source of principles and understanding. The heart encompasses all principles and truths. This phrase comes from Wang Yangming's instructions for cultivation and is also one of the essences of his philosophy. The material world is what we see around us. The principle involves our concepts of morality, distinguishing right from wrong. Subjective feelings influence how people perceive external things, resulting in their distinctions of right and wrong. What does nothing outside the heart mean? We can gain insight into his thoughts by exploring a story about Wang Yangming. Once, Wang Yangming was reading with his disciples. A disciple raised a question, lamenting why it is so hard to cultivate goodness, and so difficult to eliminate evil in this world. Wang Yangming stated that your understanding of good and evil is overly simplistic. Isn't the grass bad? From the perspective of flowers, we think grass absorbs their nutrients, and thus grass is evil. But when feeding animals, we feel that grass sacrifices itself, making it good. Is grass inherently considered good or evil? Not necessarily. It's our thoughts and perceptions that determine its goodness or evil. Conversely, if we perceive something as good, it can indeed be seen as good. If we perceive it as evil, it may be considered evil. To a certain extent, Our thoughts can significantly influence how we perceive and understand the world around us. What does it imply that nothing exists beyond the mind? Once, Wang Yangming traveled with a friend to Nanjing, and the friend suddenly pointed to a flower growing from a rock, saying, "You say there is nothing outside the mind. What does this flower blooming and falling have to do with my heart?" Wang Yangming replied, "Before you saw this flower, it existed in silence with your heart. After you see this flower, it manifests in your heart. The flower is not found outside your heart at this moment. The beautiful flower growing amidst the harsh rock is deeply recognized in its significance by the heart through its stunning manifestation." Here, the flower can beautifully symbolize all things that are beautiful, representing the positive side of everything. The idea is that form originates in the mind. When we approach something with a negative mindset, we tend to only perceive its unfavorable aspects, overlooking that it holds no intrinsic good or bad qualities. The essence of Laozi's principle in Chapter 14 of the Tao Te Ching highlights that the Tao operates through reversal, and weakness reflects its application. The two properties of things always operate towards their opposites, returning at the critical point, and this cycle repeats. Here's a simple example. Sunlight is at its weakest during the dark hours of night, then gradually begins to strengthen as dawn breaks, reaching its peak intensity at noon when the sun is highest in the sky, before slowly weakening again, ultimately returning to its original, weaker state, thus continuing this endless, natural cycle of light. Similarly, the ups and downs of life follow the same changing laws. Stay alert during prosperous times and remain calm while seeking opportunities during tough periods. At this point, some may ask, doesn't Laozi advocate for non-action in the Tao Te Ching? If grass itself is neither good nor bad, then why remove it? Although Laozi proposed non-action, there are four preceding words: follow nature. Does non-action mean doing nothing? Of course not. The premise of non-action is to follow nature and the rules of the Tao. Acting according to the laws of nature and pursuing one's passions is also following one's own Tao. Life follows natural laws: birth, aging, sickness, and death, and extreme prosperity is destined to decline. The most important thing is not to view everything from one's subjective perspective. Measure all things, but empty yourself, forget your own stance, and align with the way of nature, to view everything more comprehensively and objectively. Expand your understanding of how to find the path of all things and effectively utilize it, so that you can genuinely adhere to the principles of the Great Way and ultimately attune to the sound of nature. Thank you for watching the Daily Book Club. This interpretation of Laozi's Tao Te Ching ends here. If you have your own insights on the Tao Te Ching, feel free to leave a comment and share. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to share it with your family or friends. See you next time.